questions, direct answers. This is Face to Face with Jon Ralston.
Welcome to Face to Face. I'm Jon Ralston. It's no Vietnam yet, but protesters against the Iraq War are making frequent appearances at the offices of some targeted lawmakers. Congressman Jon Porters says it's mostly a Democratic Party ploy aimed at taking his seat. So who are the activists protesting the Iraq War, and is the war in Iraq and the war on terrorism one cause? Joining me to talk about it, war protester Teresa Crawford and Vietnam veteran Jonathan Abinet. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about what's going on in front of Porter's office and what he says is the genesis of it. I'm going to show you exactly what he said about these anti-war protests against him on Face to Face. Take a look.
The problem is a lot of the commercials and a lot of the picketing is funded by the Democratic Party, so it's pure politics. And
those radio ads are funded by the Democratic Party, I should mention that.
And the picketing, the folks that are picketing, one works for the Clinton campaign, one works for the Edwards campaign, and the invite came from the Kerry campaign. So the American people need to know that it's very disingenuous. I think the Democrats want to win the White House, and they want to make sure that I lose my race, and they're using every trick that they can. And it's not fair to these families to say that they're representing them when it's paid for by the Democratic Party. And
okay, I'll start with you, Ms. Crawford. Which campaign are you working for?
I work for no campaigns.
Well, what is he talking about there? Do you know the invite came from the Kerry campaign? You say you organized the first protest last week. You're organizing another one that's going to occur on Wednesday. Are you being paid to do this? Are you a member of any of the presidential races campaigns, the Kerry campaign?
Absolutely not, John. I'm a private citizen. I'm a registered nurse. I work part-time, stay home and take care of my mom. I'm the daughter, proud daughter of an Air Force veteran who passed away a year ago. No one is paying us to be there. I buy my own duct tape and I staple my own signs, and I email people and call people. There are several local homegrown grassroots anti-war organizations in the community who are participating. I think it's sad that the congressman is focusing more on whether or not he's going to win his race than on the issues at hand.
How did it get started? How did it get started? How did these? I mean, did this spontaneously occur to you to start organizing these groups? Did you get contacted by the Democratic Party and said, you know what, this will be a good idea?
No.
How did it get started?
No, I think it got started during the spring with Sean Sabatini. We organized a series of large rallies at the federal building, and we talked about Congressman Porter, especially when it became clear after the veto of a timetable to redeploy in May that he was not going to participate with a bipartisan majority and find a way out of this quagmire that is known as the Iraq War.
Okay, let me ask you, Mr. Abinet, you're not affiliated with Ms. Crawford. You're completely separate from her. You've been protesting the war. You've been very adamant about this for I would say a couple of years, maybe as long as that. You have any contact with the Democratic Party? You get paid by the Democratic Party or any presidential campaign?
Absolutely not, John. I no longer hold any formal title in the Democratic Party. As you know, I helped start the Vets Caucus years ago. But this is a grassroots movement of the people. There are dozens of groups, like Teresa's and Sean's and others, and there are dozens and dozens more at the national level. This is a legitimate people's movement. No one's being paid. We're spending our own money, taking our own time and dime, and trying to get out there and dissent.
What's the point? What is the point of the protest? What do you want to see happen? To
show that we sincerely support our troops. We want to end this unjust war in Iraq. We want to bring home our wounded. And for the vets and military families, we want to see the VA fully funded. You know, there are dozens of groups that are making up this coalition. It's not a conspiracy. It's not funded by some, multi-billionaire somewhere. Questioning the patriotisms of protesters is blatantly un-American. And what Porter's trying to do is swift-boat our soldiers by questioning the sincerity of our military families and veterans, and that's just despicable. He needs to apologize to every one of us, John. He's putting a political spin on this, and it's wrong.
Aren't you putting a political spin on it, too? Isn't that what he would say? You're putting a political spin on it, too. You're not looking at the reality of what's really... You can't just pull 160,000 troops out like that. You know that, right?
No, I didn't say that. And I don't know anyone that is saying that. The only ones that are talking about cutting and running are the Republicans. This is a nonpartisan effort. Sure, most of the people are probably Democrats, but we have lots and lots of independents, and we have some moderate Republicans showing up at these protests. And there are people working at every different level through the internet.
I want to talk when we come back. Jon Porters says he's doing everything that he can. He's even going to go over there to get the word from the troops. We'll get the protesters' take on whether you can get the real word from the troops, and do they really support the troops, and isn't saying that they don't a form of demagoguery? We'll ask that question when Face to Face returns. Welcome back to Face to Face. I'm Jon Ralston. We're talking about anti-war protesters and Jon Porter, the congressman's allegation that they're funded by the Democratic Party or presidential campaigns. All right, we asked the Democratic Party for a statement about Porter's allegations, and the Deputy Executive Director, Kirsten Sear, issued the following statement. Representative Porter's absurd allegations demonstrate that he's out of touch with the families in Congressional District 3 with the vast majority of Americans who want a change of course in Iraq. His comments provide more evidence that he puts President Bush's agenda ahead of the people in his own district. You're just an echo of that. You're with the Democratic Party, right?
I'm a registered Democrat, as are most of the people who choose to register with either Democrats or Republicans in Jon Porter's district. What we're asking is that he meet with his constituents in an unscripted town hall setting, perhaps moderated by yourself, to discuss these issues. Last week he said that he's changed his view of why this war needs to be fought. He says it needs to be fought to preserve our access to foreign oil from the region, and yet at the same time he refused to vote for a renewable energy bill that would in fact reduce our dependence on foreign oil.
You think he's just scripted? You think he won't meet with you because he's afraid he's going to have to go off of his script? Is that what he's afraid of, do you think?
Well, I don't know. I can't get inside his head, but when he speaks, you do hear a lot of spin and talking points that are quite similar to what issue from Karl Rove or Dick Cheney are the
Come
other.
on, Karl Rove's back in private life, and Dick Cheney's in a bunker somewhere. Don't accuse them of anything. They're gone. They're gone.
Karl Rove is writing that report that Mr. Porter is waiting for.
General Petraeus' report.
Yes.
What you're referring to is there have been stories that the White House may be writing the report and Petraeus is going to fill in the blanks. Let me ask you, Mr. Abinette. Porter said last week on the program that U.S. troops he talks with overseas are telling him they're concerned about people like you.
I'll tell you what I do hear when I'm there. They're worried. They see the same commercials. They hear the same politicians. They hear the same rhetoric, and they're afraid the American people have lost their willpower, and they're afraid the American people don't support the troops.
So think about this, and this is the point he's making. You're over there in Iraq, which is a terrible place to be right now for an American soldier, and you start hearing about these protests that the American people are losing their will. I mean, that's got to be terribly demoralizing for the troops. That's what he's saying.
And he's totally wrong.
Is he?
It's bull and it's nuts. John, I was in Vietnam in '72. I know what it's like to walk backwards and shoot, okay? I thank God every day that we had people back home dissenting against that unjust
Is that what
war.
you were saying at the time, though, Mr. Abinette? Or
yeah, that's what I was saying at the
looking
time.
back on it now, you say, you know what, I understand why people were protesting. As a soldier there in Vietnam when all these war protests were going on, weren't you saying, oh, my God, what are they doing? They're not supporting us.
You know, as a young 18-year-old man, I didn't know what to do. Believe my country or believe these war protesters, and I gave my country the benefit of the doubt. I volunteered to go to Vietnam so my little brother wouldn't have to. And when I got there, I found out the truth, that it was an unjust war, and there was no necessity for us to be there. And I turned my attitude around really quick. I did my job, I fought hard, and our troops are the best going. But you can't get answers from lower enlisted grade troops. You need to be talking to senior NCOs who've got their 20-year letter and can retire. You need to be talking to field grade officers, not just generals who can give you a general overview. You know, Porter doesn't know what he's talking about beyond a briefing book and what his staff tells him.
Well, you know, what's interesting is, as you mentioned at the beginning of the program, that you lost your dad, I think you said, who was a veteran, correct?
Absolutely.
How does it make you feel when you hear somebody say you're not supporting the troops? I mean, you're the daughter of a veteran.
It hurts because it's just so untrue. I know in my heart and in my gut the gnawing anxiety of having a loved one in harm's way. What is demoralizing the troops are 15-month deployments without adequate equipment, adequate rest between deployments, adequate training when they get there. The Army's analysis of suicide rate shows a 26-year spike. It's the highest suicide rate in 26 years, and there is a direct correlation between risk for suicide and time spent in theater.
Could I ask you a question? And if you can answer this, would be great. Did you talk to your father before he died about the war in Iraq? And what did he have to say about it?
Well, unfortunately, he had a series of devastating strokes. I do know that what Mr. Avenett was saying about the attitude turnaround happened to him at the end of his 3rd tour in Vietnam, and he came out of that understanding why I did some protesting of the war in Vietnam, not on the real radical side, by the way, and he was still cognizant at the time of 9/11, and he was kind of prescient. He said, uh-oh, that's going to make this administration do something crazy. And had he been aware, I guarantee you, because I know my dad and love him, that he would be behind me every step of the way.
You know, when we come back, you know what, I do want to talk about the point that Ms. Crawford brings up, Mr. Avenett, and that's that they're going to do something crazy. A lot of people think that they went to into Iraq to deflect from other things, and now they're conflating the war in Iraq with the war on terror. Let's talk about that. Jon Porter did it on this program. We'll show you that when Face to Face returns.